So I'm going to subdivide a few times here, 24,000 polygons. So you see it really quickly gets much more polygon counts. But now I can do much smaller and finer details. Now again, I should never ever come up to this kind of like height without first kind of like getting my base shape right. But let's assume I have this base shape right. So you can see it's taking my my sculpting into account. There's a little bit of jaggediness, so maybe I need more polygons for the detail that I'm doing. But I'm just going to leave it like this for now. Another thing I can do is, one thing that is like sort of not really a trick, but kind of is you hold shift to smooth, and smooth will smooth out the sides, and that makes it look like whatever brushstroke you just made blends into the surface. It looks like it's a wrinkle as opposed to someone just wrote a brushstroke, right? Again, if I hit Control, this is a cut, and again, if I smooth, it kind of like makes it look a little more blended to the surface. All right, so it looks like an actual dent in the surface as opposed to someone just sculpted a cut there. Okay, so that is the sculpt tool and the smooth tool. We also have the grab tool, and the grab tool is probably the best one to use if you want to make topology changes. So sorry, I always have tessellation on and I keep forgetting. All right, you can move, and you literally just move stuff like that. Oh, what's happening? No, undo. Why don't you undo? No. Oh boy. I don't know what happened. What is it? Tessellation is off. Everything's off. Okay, I don't know what happened. Luckily, it's on that sculpt layer. So I just bin that layer, and I still have my original layer. It doesn't, it's fine, like whatever I did on the layer. So that's annoying. But just be careful of that. Like always be saving, actually. And I'm going to save that now. You'll find this in both programs, by the way, ZBrush, and if anyone's used both of those, both ZBrush and Mudbox crash all the time. So just gotta save. ZBrush is a bit better. Test. All right, so I will make a new layer, sculpt on that. Cool. And you can see if I turn that on and off, so all that stuff exists only on that layer. Okay. And I can also reduce its layer strength. So a common thing that people do is make a new layer that's only for like wrinkles, for example, and then you can adjust all the strength for that entire layer. I'm just going to make another layer now, and I'm going to subdivide even more. You see the way my lower layer has gone a red kind of like X through it? That's because it was at subdivision layer 2, I think, that I made it. So let's step level down. Yeah. So now it's open again. Oh, 3. So I sculpted on this layer as subdivision level 3. And then I went up to this layer and added much more subdivision layers. So step up. And it won't allow me to sculpt. It won't allow me to sculpt on a lower layer unless I'm at the same subdivision level. So it kind of makes sense? Right, so you can see it beside it. It's like number 3. So this layer can only be sculpted on when I'm back to 3, because that was the subdivision level layer that I had when I sculpted it at first. So now it's locked to that layer. And the same with this. This can only be done at level 5. And again, you can see I don't even know what polygon count I'm on. 400,000 polys basically. So I can do really fine detail now. You can see me getting really, really fine detail. And I should only really be doing fine detail at this layer. If I want to make a big change in the actual topology, I shouldn't be doing like, that grab tool that I showed you. I shouldn't be doing stuff like this at this layer. I should be going down to the lower layers. I need to figure out how to do page down on this because it's quite annoying. So now I'm back to level 2, and I should be adjusting it at this layer. And then when I go back up, it will still have that high level detail up there. You can still see that that high level detail is still there. So even if you make a mistake and you're like, oh, I wish the jaw was a bit here or the ears are a little bit whatever, you can go back down to the lowest level, adjust it there, and then go back up and continue sculpting the high poly stuff at the higher level. So let me just go through a couple other things. So there is, you saw grab, there's pinch, and what pinch will do, it's good for making sharp edges. So this raised shape, it's raised, but it's kind of, whatchamacallit, rounded at the top. So if I pinch it, you'll see that it kind of sharpens the edge along to where I'm sculpting. Can you see that? No? Yeah? Alright, so it's good for like getting a little bit of a nicer, harder edge. So like here, for example, I might be able to do that, and it'll define it a little more. And then we have flatten, which does almost the opposite, which flattens out an area. Right, so that's flattened out. Foamy is just a little type of sculpt, but let's go to spray. And spray is interesting. Spray and repeat and like imprint for any of them, but these tools specifically are made for them. There's a thing called a stamp here. You see that it looks like tiles. So if I do that, you see the way it's like just spraying tile stamps. And there's a bunch of stamps that exist already in Mudbox here. You can select any of those, and there you go. Like all they really are, these stamps are black and white images. There's a few that are color, but really all they are black and white images. They just use black and white. Black doesn't do anything. Anything that's like slightly gray to white will bump up. The closer it is to white, the higher it pushes it up. Okay, so you can kind of see that I can stamp that image on. If I hit Control, I'll do exactly the opposite. I just press it really hard there. So I'll do exactly the opposite, but it stamps down instead of up. Okay. You can also import your own stencils here, or stamp, sorry. You just add stamp and go look for it. So if I can add stamp, let's go see if I can add something. Where's the asset sign? I'm just going to add, none of these are useful. Don't anything. I actually don't know what happens if I add this. Let's find out. Will this stamp tomahawks? Yes, it will. Grand. So you can like add stuff in, and it will just like use that as a texture for stamping. Okay, so you can just dump in image that you like. Repeat is like similar, except it doesn't spray; it just like repeats it, as you can see. I wonder what repeated tomahawks look like. Can I do that? All right, it's actually kind of a nice effect. Looks like rope. Could probably use it for rope. And an imprint will just imprint it, so it'll stamp it on like boop, like that. There is a stamp offset for like how strong it dumps it pushes it in, I guess. But there's also strength here and size for the size of the brush, and the like how strong it affects. So if I put the strength down to like 5, let's do 3. It's gonna do much less. So it's much more subtle. All right. The size, you can control it here, but I would probably use the bracket keys, same as Photoshop. So bracket up, bracket down, and it's just a lot easier. So the imprint is quite good. So I can just like scale. I'm clicking, dragging to offset the size, and then go boop, and it imprints, and it's really nice. It's good for especially if you have a really nice texture. Right. So you can see that's a black and white there. And the white areas are here. They're pushed up very high. The gray areas are pushed up a little bit. Black areas are not affected. All right. We've got wax. Wax is really just another version of sculpt, but instead of so it sculpts like this. You can see it's kind of like a flat kind of thing. And sculpt is a rounded kind of sculpt. Okay, so it's just a different type of brush. I like wax personally because it gives a little bit of a texture to the surface, but just whatever you prefer. And then we will go to, we've got fill, which is cool. So if I go up to sculpt, right, let's say I don't like this. I want a bit of it, but I want to fill in some of the gaps here. I could smooth here, let's see, but like I am getting a entirely smooth thing. It's just smoothing everything. What a fill does is it looks for the gaps and affects the gaps, but it doesn't affect the heights. So if you see, I'm sculpting. Can you see it? It's very subtle. So it's like almost filling in the valley areas. All right. Can you see it at all? It's doing stuff, but it takes a while. And that way I still keep that height, which is maybe what I want, but I smooth out the lower areas. So that's what a fill would do. Knife is like a very sharp sculpt. It by default cuts, I think. Yeah, it does. By default cuts inwards, and you can just hit Control to push it up. What the knife tool is very useful for, and again, by default the strength is 15, which I think is way too high. Let's make it 6. So if I'm doing Control there, and doing stuff like that and smoothing the edges. This is how you make wrinkles. So that looks like a cloth wrinkle, right? Sort of. It looks like a stretch kind of cloth. And that's basically how you would sculpt where a clothes kind of like wrinkle and do these kind of things, right? So again, depending on the cloth type, if I do very fine wrinkles like this, that kind of shape, these kind of very tiny kind of thin wrinkles only happen on very satiny kind of cloth. Whereas if you're wearing like wool or something really thick, then your folds are going to be much thicker and rounder, and you probably use the sculpt tool to make that look like wool. So it just completely depends on the material you're trying to emulate. Again, go and reference it, go and look what it looks like in real life. And then we got Bulge. Bulge is useful for expanding a certain area. So let's say I want like this part to be bigger for some reason. I'll just bulge it, and it just gets bigger. Be careful of stuff like this where it clips in. You don't want that. My undo is not. Oh, there we go. And then we got amplify, and it just kind of like essentially it's like a contrast, I suppose. So if you see that, it kind of like makes it way more contrasty. So it kind of defines the areas. What it does is it pushes all the lower areas down and the higher areas up. So it just makes it more contrasty. These stuff, don't worry too much about these because these are for tessellation. They're brand new in 2018. It's 2019 now, but they were new in 2018. So don't worry too much about these for now. And then you can also do this mask tool, which, will basically like block off certain areas and allow you to mask off certain areas. So it basically means I can block a certain area off so it's not affected when I'm sculpting, and then I can sculpt without worrying about touching that area. So you might want that sometimes. You might want to edit a certain part but not touch other parts that are very close by. Okay. And again, as usual, everything is only on its own sculpt layer. So if I don't like it, I can just turn it off. And it's very common practice to add sculpt layers with different features. So I'll add a sculpt layer for skin pores and everything. All the skin pores will go on that. Add a sculpt layer for like scars, and I'll just add sculpt layers because they're kind of free. They're not expensive, and it just means you can, if you don't like it, you haven't destroyed your entire model. It's only there in one layer, exactly like this in Photoshop. Cool. Any questions on that? We're good? All right, so what I would like you to do, we're well in time. So what I'd like you to do is probably start with the sphere. We're gonna try to make a rock. And I know, super exciting. But it's gonna look cool. We're gonna try and make a rock. We're gonna try and make it very, very detailed, and then we'll do the baking of the high poly mesh onto the low poly mesh. So we'll get at the end of it, we'll get a game ready, very low poly model that looks like it's got loads of detail. Okay, we won't worry about texturing it for today. We'll just like project it. So I'm going to restart all of this, and I won't save it. Yeah. Oh, you can rename layers by double clicking on them. Cool. So your first step is probably to like grab the object and make it more or less the shape you want it to be. And figure out whether you want a hard edge rock or a smooth rock. If you want a hard edge, you probably want to use a flatten tool to make sure things are. So I'm still in the first subdivision layer, but I have a much more rock looking thing than the original sphere. But you want to stay on the lower level layers until you get your shapes right. Everyone's safe. Do not do. What? Where you go down level? Which level? Well, then that's false layers on it level 3 C plus. Just reach down to go down level. Which level? That's what I was doing. We haven't done anything around this. So far. Well, then curiosity also. I'll leave it another 5 minutes. Would that work? Yeah. Everyone knows. Yes. Why have you frozen it? The best way to do that is to not freeze it in the first place. So right click, and you should be able to. Oh, sorry, it's not here. Object list. Let's see. The reason you would use lock and lock is you have other so like if I'm sculpting a head, I would put some eyeballs, right? I'll put the eyeballs and then lock. Okay, so you've done a different thing. Yeah. If you're searching for textures, CG textures is pretty good, free stuff. And then whenever you're searching for the actual texture, just search like rock texture or rock alpha, and that usually gives you pretty good stuff. Sometimes they want you to pay for What week is it? Week 8? So divided is shifty. Anyone know what week we are? When was your review? Was your review last week? 2 weeks ago? That was us. 4 months. Okay. No, I'm just trying to figure out like what we cover. We can do stuff. All right, so that's 5 minutes. Let's go to the retopology section and getting a low poly model out of the high poly. So I'm gonna do this relatively quickly. I'm gonna take a few shortcuts. Hopefully not too badly. So I have this ready to go. It's very high poly. I don't even know how many high polys step level up. It is, come on. It is level 400k, not that bad. But not for a rock that's really high. So what I want to do is I want to export this high poly mesh first. So I would go away from layers to the object list and select the level 5. And I'll go to File, Export Selection, and I will call this Rock High Poly. FBX is fine, and that should be exported. By the way, when you go to the layers, you see there's a paint. There is paint stuff in here, but substance is kind of better. All right, so that's done. That's my high poly mesh should be ready. Let me just open up 3ds Max while we get ready, and I just want to make sure that high poly mesh is there. Okay, so now I have that exported. The problem is, deselect the model. The problem is this model is super high poly, so I want to make a low poly version of it. There are a few ways. Some people just export the lowest level of the mesh, but that only works if the shape is exactly correct, and at the higher levels, all you did was add small detail. I didn't. I changed shape, so I'm going to do something called a retopology. So that should be in mesh. Excuse me. Retopologize. And I'll do new operation. So target face count is basically what I am targeting it to be. So let's say for this rock, I want it to be, let's say 600. I don't know if that's too few. We'll try. So 600, the output mesh is going to be rock, low, poly. That's the name. And then I can do curves, which actually before this, I'll show you curves. Apologies. So curves are these yokes. You can create a curve. It's like the same as sculpt. You see the way I'm drawing a curve there? You can also do curve loops. So if I cut across, it will loop all the way around, So why would I want that? Is maybe I want, like, wherever I draw a curve, I can tell Mudbox to prioritize it and make an edge loop around there. So there'll be edges there. All right. So I might want to do a curve around here, for example, and that way I know there's going to be a cut all the way around. That makes sense? Or I might want to have a seam down here, and I can cut it like that. Where it's especially important is if we go to faces or muscles in general, perfect. So you see this, they're trying to get this muscle groups around the eyes and around the mouth, near the nose. So they're trying to get those edge loops because in real life, those are where the muscles are as well. So we have muscles on the top of our eyes and the bottom of our eyes, and when we close them, it's the muscles that are pushing together. So if you want to animate it and you want it to look realistic, or at least as close to realistic as possible, they need to have edge loops in the same areas so they can be affected similar. Does that make sense? All right. So in these situations, what I might do if I was, let's say that stupid ammonite is the eye, I would do a curve and I would be like, I would be like prioritize having a curve around the eye, like so, and it would make sure there's an edge loop around that area. Okay, and I can draw curves wherever I want. Just the more complicated I make it, so I can be like this, and I'll tell Mudbox, please make sure there are edges on these areas. Okay, and Mudbox will try its best to follow that. Oh, I made a mistake. You generally don't need to do it on corners because it usually makes an edge loop in the corner anyway. But it's just if there are specific parts you really want there to be a curve in, you can draw the curve. All right. So if I go back to Retopology, so that was, come on. Okay. Let's save because it smells like it's about to crash. Retopologize. Let's do it again. And this is rock low poly. My target face count is going to be 600. Face uniformity is basically, the more uniform it is, it'll try to keep all the polygons the same size. The less uniform it is, it'll try to add more polygons in areas with a lot of detail. So again, in the case, let's say my face, right? These areas will be very large polys because they're very smooth. There's no like small, tiny detail. Around my nose, around my eyes, it will try to add more detail. So if I want it to be optimized and do that and put loads of polygons where there's a lot more detail, I can set it all the way down to 0. If I want all the polygons to be the same size, I'll put it all the way up to 1. Generally, I find somewhere in between just works, something like that. I will use curves to control the topology. You can see that's using those curves. That's fine. I can transfer the new mesh sculpted detail if I want. No, it's just not. And then symmetry is if you have a symmetrical object, you can tell it just choose one side and then just flip it onto the other side, so it'll make it symmetrical. In this case, my rock is completely asymmetrical, so I shouldn't do that. So I'm going to have not required for symmetry. And let's retopologize. It'll take a while. You see reducing mesh there. Okay. And now it's, yeah, after this is over, hopefully it doesn't crash. It is taking, yeah, not that bad. After this is over, I should get a low poly mesh. And hopefully where I drew those curves, you should see Mudbox try to create edge loops where I drew those curves. So now it's just a waiting game until it's done. Shouldn't be too long. So while I'm doing this, you all may want to export your high poly and also repot this. I'm nearly finished. Yay! Okay, so you can see there. Oh, sure. Okay, so you see what it did. It followed what I said, where I told it to try and like add a lot more high poly in the areas with a lot of detail, and it has. It's probably added too much more than I would like. See the way it's like, because I had a lot of detail here and it's adding a lot of polygons there. So I'll probably do the operation again, and this time try to push the slider a little more towards uniformity, so that I don't get these areas of loads of little high poly. But what it has done, you see the way there's like an edge loop, like a circle around where I drew that circle. So it has done what I told it to do. So I'm going to undo that, and I will retopologize again, but this time I'll add uniformity more. So mesh, retopologize. I could probably do the same one again, yeah, and I'll just edit this. So I'll edit more to uniform size, bit more towards uniformity. Retopologize. Now we wait again. So you all have time to do yours. Does anyone have any issues? Cool. Oh, damn it. Oh, do it again. Uniformity maximum. Say again, sorry. Do you poly count? I usually just page up, page down, and you see the poly count. I actually don't know if you can turn on a poly count all the time. Let's find out. Is there a button? What did you say? Oh yeah, cool. Thank you. Don't use this program that much. ZBrush boy. Doing retopology. What did you tell it to do? Because it had a target face count. I told it 3,000. What did you tell it? Sorry, I told it 600. Well, did you? turn off the scope. Because if you transfer scope to detail, it has all the subdivisions as well. And it gives it the. Alright, that's pretty good. And I'm down to 1,600 polys. I asked it for 600. It gave me what it thought would work, so it's 1,600. I can retopologize again. Even the low poly one, I can retopologize the low poly one more time. I'm not going to. I'm okay with it. But in the case that you really need it to be lower poly, just remember you can do that. So here it is, rock low poly. My original sphere is still there. It's just hidden away. So here's my rock low poly. And let's just export that. So file, export selection. And this is rock low poly. And in maximum, where's my viewport? Cool. So now I'm going to import both of my FBXs. File, import, import. And just hit OK. So this is my F4 for that. There's my low poly, and let me import my high poly. Sure. And there's my high poly, which I stupidly kept a called sphere. Let's call that rock high poly. Cool. All right, so they are. Oh, let's save it as well. Rock retopo. Okay, coolio. Come on, save. So high poly and low poly, and they kind of match over on top of each other, which is exactly what I want. That's pretty good. Low poly is there, high poly is there. So now what I need to do is bake that high poly onto the low poly. So the first thing I need is I need a UV. It needs to be unwrapped. So let me just do an unwrap very quickly. And I'm going to do like not the greatest unwrap. I'm just going to do a quick unwrap. So where is the here? Let's just unwrap it. Whoa. Oh, we gotta do this. It's not the best unwrap in the world. Leave me alone. I think that should be okay. I'm just going to try and split it in half. Maybe. Might not work, but let's see. Start relax. Not great. Not the worst. Yeah, okay. For now, it should be fine. And let's do the other side. Cool. And then let's pack those together. Grand. So that's unwrapped, all right? I would probably try to unwrap it better than I'm doing, but I'm just trying to get there quickly enough. Cool, grand, and then I can convert it back to edible poly. So it's got its unwrap, and now it's edible poly. So I now need to get the high poly into the low poly. This part is a little complicated, but basically what I need to do is do a bake of it, do a texture render of the high poly to low poly. So I'm going to do rendering and render to texture. Coolie bumps. All right. So objects to bake is my rock low poly. I'm selecting it, so it automatically selected that as the object to bake. So that's fine. I need to enable projection mapping. So remember, I'm projecting the high poly onto the low poly. So yes, that's enabled. And then I need to pick the source object, which is Sorry, I have it set so it only shows bones. Geometry, cool. Rock. High poly. So the object that I'm going to use is the high poly rock. Right? Did it get picked there? I think that worked. Yeah. Oh no. Oh no. Okay, cool. Alright, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. So I'm going to use existing channel. I don't want to use an automatic unwrap because automatic unwrap Max will unwrap something brand new for me. I'm going to use the existing channel, my unwrap that I made. And then the output, let's add an output, and I want to output a normal map. And it's now going to have all these options. I know it looks very confusing, but really just follow what I'm doing. I want an output. I want the output of type PNG, not target. And let's save that into, so rock normals PNG file. Let's do 256. Yeah. And then I need my resolution. So I'm gonna do 2K. I can also type it in here. I can do a 4K map. Do we do 4K? Yeah, let's do 4K. 4K is 4096. I'm just gonna close this door. That should be ready. Cool. Don't need any of these. And I hopefully now when I render, before I render. So what it's doing is I'm selecting the low poly model. You see that blue cage around it? What it's doing is anything in that cage, any other topology will be baked onto the low poly. Anything of the what I said was the source model, which is the high poly. Sometimes in this case the cage looks pretty good. Actually looks pretty good. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's it doesn't cover all of the high poly stuff, or it doesn't have a nice shape. In which case, what you just need to do is reset that cage, and then push it out a bit to make sure that it grabs all. It covers all of the high poly area. Okay, but most of the time, it does need to be reset. But in this case, it actually is not too bad. And then I'll render. Don't care. Continue. And hopefully, why did I bake 4K? I should have just done 24. No, it's right. So it's baking, and it looks pretty good. This is not the normal map. This is just showing me it rendering. By default, it only shows you the diffuse render. You can use this technique to bake anything, any of the maps. You can bake normal maps, but you can also bake diffuse. So if you painted something in high poly and you want to like project it to a low poly, you can also bake a diffuse. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Yeah, man. Alright, so let me save that. And let me go to asset design and see whether it looks alright. Happy days. Looks pretty decent. I can even see my little ammonites and everything there. And now the final test is, let me check in, let's check in Unity. Asset design. All right, let's bring in our lovely rock. So it's the low poly. Oh no, because I unwrapped it. So I need to export this low poly because this one has the unwrapped, the other one doesn't. So export selected, and asset design, and rock low poly unwrapped. So that should be okay. Yeah, cool, whatever. Low poly unwrapped. Can't import like that. New asset. And rock low poly unwrapped. Let's dump that rock. Okay, so there's the low poly rock there. Here it is. And you can see that it is low poly and doesn't really do very much. But fingers crossed, once we import the normal maps, should go onto it. So it is material, rock, material, and this goes on here, and we add the normal map. Come on. Come on. And fix it because it's not marked as a normal map. Okay, so I'm getting some issues. See where the seam is. Everything else looks pretty good. I don't know why it is so shiny. Let's have a look at this. Normal map 2D. Let's put 2 German maps. Not that smooth. Okay, that's better. But I am getting issues with the here where the seam is. So you do want to be careful where you cut your seams. Definitely getting issues with that. I'll probably have to rebake that and try that again. You can see it's working though, right? Yeah. So I would definitely try and rebake that. That doesn't look very good. Either way, it does work. So normal map. So 0. That's better. Okay. Not sure why I'm getting such a bad seam though. Move it away from. No, it's really bad. Okay, that's annoying. And my normal map doesn't look good. It looks fine here. DXTNM. Oh, max size 106. No compression. Let me re-render it. And I'll try to render as a target instead. And that's tool for it. Render as target. Okay, let's try that. Does anyone see it? Where is it? Oh, it went to. Yeah, should be there. Up there. Just took a while. This is a normal map. That looks better. That one looks weird. I don't know why. By the way, rock material, normal map. Yay, that's way better. Cool. Right, it might have been the PNG setting that I chose. Let's turn down directional light. It's a bit light, so you can see that it's working much better. Yeah, and that's in engine. Cool. Any questions? G? Coolie webs. And then, as usual, you can change the intensity of it. Coolio. So that's kind of how like a lot of environmental art is done, with a lot of high poly stuff using a low poly material. This is still my low poly. Cool. That's it. Good. Do you want to try doing that projection while I'm